pleasure to have this opportunity to presenting really a data set that I came across not too long ago in May this year, and also developing sort of a group assignment for my class, my HIMP 310 class, with this data set in mind. So I had this sort of rolling objective of using the data set in Tableau, and then I added that to use it in Power BI and then kind of compare usability, which is always an interesting aspect. So today I'll start sharing my screens here to show you the document that was sent out earlier, I believe yesterday or the day before, by Arlene and Sasha. And by the way, thanks Arlene and Sasha for setting this workshop up. It's very supportive, and it's good practice for me and others to sort of get introduced to how to actually present dashboards in a workshop. So I've used this data set from MIT called the EICU Collaborative Research Database. It was developed, I believe, in 2016 initially, and it's been kind of iterations been going through, and it's has papers published in Nature 2016 and 2018, and the latest demo version, which is supposed to simulate the actual database, that they cleaned it up or they've modified some of the data set, including the data identification and stuff like that. So I have a link in that to the actual data set itself, and literally the data can be extracted from that link. You'll see on the bottom of the page here all the files. It was initially developed in SQLite. I literally downloaded all these files and then put them into Tableau and Power BI, and it was that simple. I didn't even register. Like some other the public use files, you have to register, you have to complete some ethics, those kind of things. But this one, I didn't have to do that. The actual database, which is a link here as well, you have to complete a course by MIT. It's only $60, and use their larger data set, which is over 200,000 admissions in their ICUs across US. From 2014 to 2015. The demo data set, I believe, is about 30,000 admissions, so it's still pretty high up there. And I'll talk about the data set in a little bit more detail before, as we move along, because that's important for us to know the different tables and how to visualize them and graph them. Okay, so without further ado, in terms of the pre-workshop. I believe some of you from Manitoba have access now to the labs. All right, so you'll get an initial prompt. Just enable that. This reason I've enabled R and Python. We'll see how much time we have before going into that at the end of this workshop. But for now, there it is. There's the Power BI with all the dashboards. There's like 13, 14 of them, and a few other things that I've set up for us to view and discuss. Okay, so let's go from there. If everyone's good, if you're not good at accessing the remote lab, just let me know, and I'll bring that screen back up. So another thing is that, let's go back to the Power BI again. In this document, I have I have a few links, and they're for links to the file, and there's the files there, so you can download. This is a Power BI file. You can right-click and download that file. There's a presentation slides as well, and here's the CSV data. You can download that to your desktop. I also have for Tableau. So now this is an important step to do. For Tableau, we need to access the file. and having gone through this process a few times now, you need to download this file to your desktop. So download, and it's there. And then you also need to download the CSV data, because when you open this Tableau file on your desktop, it'll ask you to access or locate files that is linked to that Tableau file. So I have some screenshots of that. So it takes a little while to zip that up. Just waiting for that to zip. Okay, so now that's zipped. And then the zip takes a little while to place in your download folders. And then from the download from this file here, just close some of this stuff here for now. You can move it to your desktop and extract all. There we go. And then desktop, extract all. Extract all files, desktop. And then once you have those files there, keep that in mind, that location, and then open this file here up, and then it'll ask you to locate the files. I already have the Tableau open here, but let me just go through this process with you before we get stuff into the actual graphing and review of the dashboards. Okay, so it opens up for me without the locate files because it's the file that I've saved already from my location. But there's two prompts, and I'll show you that in my slides here. Okay, so Ben Schneiderman from our workshop last, I'll get into showing those files, those screenshots of the locate files just after I go through a bit of steps here as we get into the Tableau. So Ben Schneiderman was one of the keynote speakers in the VADA last week, the seminars and workshops, and I enjoyed his keynote speech and the goal of visualization that he kind of brought into light and sort of reviewed and talked about the iterations of it. And I think it's very applicable to dashboards and getting into this data set, that EICU data set from the MIT and Philips healthcare vendor, because it has 30 tables. It's kind of complicated in terms of it's all from electronic records. So you have to kind of think about where this data is coming from. And I'll go over to some of the tables, what the tables are referring to. But then you kind of go and get into those iterations of graphing them. And Tableau and Power BI are excellent tools just to sort of graph, as many as you want, bam, 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 or retract and graph and change things around. So it's really nice to have those access to it. And this kind of visualization, information visualization mantra is very applicable to this workshop. So we're going to go over some graphs and workflows. Relational database is and primary key and sort of how that works with this data set. The big thing is the filters. We'll talk about the filters. That's the main reason why we are using these dashboards, is because as humans, we can't really process or filter that information, especially with stuff like pharmaceuticals and medications and lab orders, which are in the thousands, and 30,000 to 200,000 hospital admissions. We just can't process that information as quickly as the dashboard can filter it and sort it out and give you a better view of it to make that potentially decision-making point. And we'll also do top N or top 20 or top 10 and some sliders. Both Power BI or both Tableau and Power BI have these integrated into their product. Groups and sets is a big one. You can group different ways to graph, and then you can make sets to actually create some sort of dynamic interaction in the dashboard. So we'll go over that. Create a parameter and calculation fields. Also very important. It gives you some more in-depth analysis. Dashboards, again, we're just creating that. I'll show you some functionality in both of these tools, starting off with Tableau. And then there's a storyboard with Tableau that actually is multiple dashboards and worksheets that you can combine together to create a kind of a workflow and a view, which I'll show you in a little bit. And then there's some graphing from different tables, and I'll go over some lessons learned after I've introduced you to Tableau before the Power BI, and then at the end of this workshop, we can discuss some of the lessons that I thought were important. Here's some links here. I've already showed the first couple, meaning this is the actual data set, the article that talks about the demo data set that came out in May 2021. Over 2,500 unit stays. It does span across this demo about 200,000, but I think roughly around 30,000 in total. So they somehow filtered that out. Them meaning MIT and these researchers here that published this article. It was a collaboration between MIT and Philips healthcare vendor, as I mentioned earlier. And they, through these 20 larger hospitals across the US in their electronic records, they created this sort of data set. It's freely available, which is pretty awesome. This link here is the one to the actual data set. This one is to the Mimic. The Mimic here I can briefly talk about before I get into the tables again. In Tableau is medical information marked for intensive care. And in this sort of suite of data sets, the one that we're dealing with is the Mimic. I think it's 3 or 4. They have different versions, but it's ICU. But you can see there's hospital one, there's free text note ones, there's ED. They have a variety of different data sets through this Mimic documentation and availability through MIT. Here's an article published in Nature. I have in the slides here. There's a few articles that they've published, this research group, on this data set that they've designed or collaborated on. And there's tables here, a review of them, the Mimic tables themselves, and you can access that through the documentation. Again, there's Mimic 4 here. There's even tutorials, all sorts of different information in that on these links. This one's a good one. This is for us. This is dealing with the actual tables in the data set. So when we are going through them, this is how they look. And let me just bring up the Tableau again here. So I can show you, I go into this, all these tables here in Tableau are the similar tables that are listed here. So all the content that's listed in these tables in Tableau, and hopefully you have this open already. If not, just let me know. Yeah, so these table names are at the top, and then below are the contents of these tables. And so if I go admission drug here for the top one in Tableau and just kind of briefly show you what it looks like, then they give you the column names here, exactly what we're working with, and it gives you some idea. So there's quite a few offset. This one's drug enter offset, the name of it, an integer, and it's a number of minutes. And most of the offsets are either in minutes or seconds in this data set. It's not really readily available, but a lot of the naming convention is actually fairly straightforward in this table. And I'll go into how to view and get into what those table contents are before we get into too much of the graphing of them. Okay, so again, here's the references, three main ones I've talked about. And so we're going to go into sort of the considerations of what the visualizations are. And again, I mentioned this is from electronic health records, so we have to think about where this data is coming from and how the linkages could be between the tables to create a dashboard. And the data is supposed to be cleaned already from the perspective of the previous authors of this demo data set. We'll navigate through the Tableau views, panels, panes, and tabs. So when we're in Tableau, each of these, either it's a data source, worksheet, or storyboard, as you can see in the lower right-hand side in the corner. There's these little tabs here, and you just click on one of them, and this dashboard shows up. The previous one is a worksheet that will, a new worksheet, and then a new storyboard will appear. That's the same as up top here. So you have worksheet, dashboard, storyboard, and there's new up top in the left-hand corner in the tabs or ribbon. And additionally, there's the data source as well, tab, which you can manipulate or change in real time as well in Tableau. And I'll go into that in a sec. So there's a layout of Tableau and these views, panes, panels, tabs or ribbons, and each of the data source, the dashboards, the worksheets, the storyboard, they have their own view and panels, panes, tabs, and customized clicking and manipulating whatever is on that visualization. We'll create some different charts and visualizations. I also have in the PowerPoint slides, I posted a couple of slides have videos, use Screencastify in Google, and created the steps to create those specific dashboards or worksheets. But I'll also, in this workshop, we'll go over those. Definitely. And then, so there's also an interactive dashboard and storyboard, and we'll talk about that after we get into the data set a little bit more here. And then there's filtering the dashboard data to tell a story kind of thing. And that's really the objective of this workshop. Okay, so like I mentioned, in Google Drive, you copy paste from that document that was sent out earlier, that URL, and it opens up, and the Tableau file, it has an extension of TWB. You place it on your desktop. You also need to download the CSV. Unfortunately, I was hoping that we didn't have to do that, and we tested a few times, and sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. I didn't want to publish the data, because when you publish the data, you can't really save it and stuff from an individual's perspective. So I left it as sharing a file with you. So you download that CSV file. It has all those tables in there, and then you unzip and extract. Double click on the Tableau file on your desktop, and it'll show you something similar to this, where unable to complete action, and then you click through that, and then there's another prompt saying there's a connectivity problem to the data source. Once you have that file open and you're clicking on it in the data source tab, and then you locate that file. Unfortunately, there's a few steps involved in this. I wish there wasn't, but that's the process there. But once you're in once you've located the files, you have the exact same view that I have, the exact same file. And we can go from there. So let's go back to the data source then. So in the Tableau file, I have set up the data source and all the 13, 14 dashboards, and each dashboard has at least 4 or 5 or more graphs, and there's a couple storyboards at the end of this trail. And it's all in the lower half of this view. You can also go to the if you go back to the graph and you go to the window, you actually get a larger display of all the different dashboards and worksheets that I've set up here. So there's quite a few for you to play around with and to view. We'll go over most of these today. And so if you go back to the data source on the bottom lower end, it takes a little while to connect. And you'll see that there is this update now and automatically updates. So if you click update now, it should populate with the columns in that table. And that table, the main table, is called the patient table. It's like a star schema in this data set where this patient table has the primary key for all the tables. So it's the same primary key. There's a couple different keys, but for now, we'll focus on it. The one that's displayed right here is the patient unit stay ID, and you'll see that it links to, it's a many-to-many relationship, and it links to all the different tables. In this case, it's patient table to the intake and output file with that primary key. And it's kind of important to link those two because that's how the data set is designed. It was initially designed for SQLite, so SQL queries and making inner joins, outer joins, and all those kind of things to link the tables together. Briefly, we can just grab one of those tables on the side and then link it to the patient table. And we'll just to show you that process. It's fairly basic. This is exactly what I had to do initially when I loaded the data directly from that PDF, that research article. I put the tables on this side, loaded them in Tableau, and then I created this relationship. So here you can see there's a relationship from that patient table. And the one I just moved across is called admissiondrug.csv. And it's the same ID number. It's an integer with this hashtag. So you can add more fields. You can go into a little bit more detail about the cardinality of relationships and those kind of things. So for now, I'll just remove it because I already have this table. Okay, so that's removed. The table's displaying properly. If you wanted to see other tables, you just can click on them and view them in this data source, but you can also do that in the other views. So that's, and then with, like I said, there's different functionality within each of the sort of the four main tabs: data source, demographic, or sorry, data source, worksheets, dashboards, and storyboards. And this is some of the functionalities up top here for you to view. We're not going to go into too much detail. I just try to create the database as simple as possible for us to kind of review it quickly and get into more of the visualization perspective and how to see what kind of differences are between Tableau and Power BI. Okay, so that's that one. And let's see here now. So if I go back to this article, before we get into graphing, I want to cover some of the aspects again. So we went to the data set of this document that we were provided before this workshop. There's different data types, and like I said, getting into where this data set's coming from, electronic records. There's technology types, they call it in the research paper for this demo data set, called documenting, performing a clinical assessment. There's nurse assessment, care plans tables, which I'll show. And there's multi-parameter monitoring, like the vital sign monitors has several different parameters that they've recorded. You know, not just systolic, dystolic, or heart rate, but saturated O2, respiration, all sorts of different things. And we'll go into that. And that's also in the measurement types as well. So you can see vital sign measurements here. There's admission, there's clinical evaluation, there's care, treatment plans, etc. And there's at the hospital, different hospitals, and they actually have different groups like the Midwest or Northeast and those kind of areas. Okay, so we have that, and then this is the relational data set for the view in Power BI, which we'll talk about after the Tableau lesson. We've loaded the file, hopefully by now. We're into the 30 minutes of this workshop. Again, let me know if this didn't work for you. Even if you don't want to ask me now, you can definitely let me know later on. I'm curious. I've taught this I've used this similar data set with my undergraduate course that I'm teaching now. And the whole class went through this process already. So there's a few hiccups in the way, like everything else, but once you have that file open, it works like a champ. So it's a nice little demo for sure. And then loading the Power BI file, you can use Google Drive or that remote desktop or remote lab to the UVic VPN using your Netlink ID like I showed earlier. And then we're starting to use Tableau now a little bit more and more. Like I said, we're going to describe the tables in a little bit more detail here. We're going to get into some of the structure of it. Apparently this HIPAA was involved as well as the PI. This for protecting health information, de-identifying the patient data. There's no patient data there. The actual data set is at the ICU level. That's why I've included this patient identifiers here. There's a unique PID, but it's only linked to, and it's not really available at the higher level in the data sets. It's only at the patient unit stay level that we're really working in, and we're using that as a primary key. And it is designed as a primary key. There's another key here called the patient health system stay ID. It is also available in the data sets. I did not link that and create that in the actual overall structure in Tableau or Power BI. But that's also an ID that links at the hospital level. So if you wanted to change your analysis a little bit higher up in that level from unit ICU level to hospital, then you can do that. And you can also still use this as a variable in your graphing as well, or parameter in your graphing. So that's that part. And in this document as well, there's the researchers from MIT showed some of a patient's single stay based on vital signs, which is, I think, the reason why they did this is because they really need to show the pertinent information for vital signs, especially with their collaboration with Philips healthcare vendor, but also get into some sort of minute details about electronic records that have vital signs in those data sets or databases. For us, we can't really create this kind of measurement value, but I can show you some different ones that we can do. And you can add all sorts of different, on one graph, different variables, which we'll talk about. And then we'll get into exploring some of the different graphing and data analysis in the Tableau, and then we'll create some dashboards like I mentioned, and then we'll move on to Power BI doing similar steps. Does anyone have any questions? Any questions that they'd like to ask? Okay, so for this, I'll start off in the slides. I'll start off at the graphing level. This view currently is the dashboard level. I wish there was a way to expand the dashboard. You can go into presenter mode in Tableau. Let's see if yeah, so that's the presenter mode in Tableau, but this doesn't really show us really that much better. So, to start off with, and if you're not familiar, you probably are a little bit. Some of you are familiar with Tableau. I know from going through the VADA program, we worked on Tableau quite extensively and added potentially R scripts or Python. But if you're not, I'm just going to go through a few basic things to get out of the view when you're looking at the graphs in Tableau or starting them especially. So let's just start one first and then go into what we're seeing here. So first there's columns and rows at the top, and then you can drag drop fields within an area in the Tableau graphs. There's different markings. There's automatic or default that you can have initially, and then you can change that depending on what you like to do once the graph is displayed. Another thing is that, and the main thing here really is Tableau provides sort of a default sort of graphing once you put the variables in there, and let's do that. We have one here called drug name, from the top table, and it's blue, which means it's a dimension or category. It's not an integer. And you can go, when you're in the tables, you can go back to this drug name and you can right click and you can go to describe. When you go into describe, it gives you sort of, it's a discrete dimension, it's a column, and it's a character string. It's UK, I guess. Column width is 255, and here's the 20 examples of 200 or 820 members. Wow. So this is has 820 columns, basically, or rows, depending on how you look at it. But there's a lot of different, and this is all alphabetical, and these are all drug names. And then so we can go into, if we want a graph, we maybe want to add an integer. So we go into the rows for integer. And this I selected is from quite a few tables that I graphed with, is the patient unit stay ID. Sometimes you get this loading thing, and you just click on the load to show what domain it is, and you can see that this integer starts off at 281,000, going up to 3 million plus. And this is a unique identifier. So summing these numbers is not ideal. So you'll need to change that. And so if you go into that sum, that's the green one, the patient unit stay ID, which is the unique identifier, the primary key for this database. And then you can go into count. So count is like the frequency. So that means it's a unique identifier. So it could potentially mean the number of patients with those drug names. And so you can scroll over and you can see this one has, for aspirin, there's 251 counts of this patient unit stay ID. So potentially 251 patients. From 2014 to 2015, across those 20 hospitals in the US have had aspirin as dispensed or administered drug. Okay, so, and also you notice when we moved, initially this was all grayed out here, but now that we have columns and rows, then you can select, you can change, different, this is a tree map, so that's what it looks like. And if you don't like that graph, and you notice that some of the values got moved from the top here down. So if I click on here, they should move back up, but it's not quite as what we initially set it as. And a big thing with Tableau and PowerBI for that matter is these back arrows. So you can just go back arrow to the initial graph that you had. But still, there's a lot of variety here. There's different tables, pie charts, which maybe not the ideal thing to have, stacked graphs, circle views, or in scatter plots, box plots, bubbles, maps, in a tree map. Okay, so from there we can see that so this data set has 820 and it's not usable. It's not something visually we can absorb too much on, other than moving our mouse around and seeing what the values are. And another thing is the words are kind of sideways here, the drug names. So we want to change that up. So we put that down to the row and then the column. Oftentimes when I'm dealing with data sets that I don't know, I usually go actually to the table view. So I get an idea of how data, it looks cleaner in the beginning, but then you kind of, if you wanted to add more to it, you can see, let's say you want to add drug type here. So it gives you an overall idea of how this data set is looking as you build it in the visualization. So like for instance, well, I'm not savvy on other drug types. Acetaminophen. So you have the drug type is mission, comprehensive progress, and then readmission, for example. And there's also drug unit. It's not the best one. So let's go back here and then we right click on drug unit, describe. Oh, it just gives you just different doses and drops and patches and puffs and stuff like that. Okay, so maybe that's not something ideal. But if you wanted to go back to the original graph that we had just recently, go back with the arrows, and there it is. But obviously that's not the ideal case. Oh, I see. That's my sorry. That's my lab. Okay, there it is. Okay, so from there we can think about what we want to graph out of this, and again we can move this down here. And then we can, we have count now, not sum. We have the drug names as legible, as read them easier, but still it's not the best to view. And then so we can go and first as we go into sort. So into sort, we don't sort, for some reason Tableau doesn't sort at the data source level. It sorts at the field level. So we have to select field and you'll see the graph changed. And then we want to go, you have the field name here, right? So that's, you can change that if you like, but we'll leave it for now. And the aggregation is count, which we want. We don't want to change that, but there's different, and that's the nice thing about Tableau. You have a lot of different selections here already. There's different, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. So if you go sort descending, and already you see the aspirin's number 1, and then lisopronil is number 2, Lasix is number 3, etc. So we can just exit out of that. So we get something out of this graph already. We get something that we know in the data set, aspirin is number 1 and 251. So it's not like thousands of patients that got this aspirin in this table, admission table. There's a few different drug tables, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But for this admission, the first table, admission drug table, aspirin's number 1. And then we can go into filters. And filters, you can do a few different things. You can use all or select different drugs. You can do matching here, which we're not going to go into too much detail. It gets a little bit complicated. You can create kind of conditions and ranges that you want to show. Maybe it's for pharmaceutical or for pharmacy informatics. This kind of stuff would be beneficial because there's so many different drug names. And maybe you don't want to see exactly the top 10. You want to see a range at a certain amount. So for here, you can click on by field again, and you can do top 10. And if you click apply, it'll give you the top 10. So you get and you can change that. It's a static filter. So you can change that. But if you wanted to have it more dynamic, you need to create a few different things. And one is a parameter. So I have parameters down here. And let's say we have a top N parameter. So let me just click on that for you. I need to edit. And so that top N parameter is shown here. And let's create another one. So let's just create one on the fly. So we go to that table, you go back to drug name, you highlight it, and then you right click and you go to create. And create, you have these 4 main things in Tableau that add more dynamic functionality to it. Oh, sorry, I gotta remove this first. Yeah, so there's 4 main things, 4 main sort of how do you call it? Processes, concepts, or manipulations to the actual data in the graphs. There's calculated fields, groups and sets, and parameters. And we'll get into groups and sets and calculated fields after this, and when we go through some of the slides as well. So for parameters, let's just click on the parameter for now. And so when you open this up, it says drug name parameter, it's a string, which it is. Well, we don't want to create a string for this filter. We want to create an integer. So we select integer, and then we go into the range instead of all lists. And so we want to have maybe 200 maximum, top 200, for example, in that range. And then you just And so drug name parameter, you can't have the same parameter names. So we can just create the drug name top 20 parameter. So you just click OK. And then from there, you right click and you show parameter. So you'll see on the just below the show me icon here, which if you click it, you'll always see graphs that you could change to on the fly. But you'll see that there's a slider here, and you can go up, but you'll see that the graph's not changing. If you don't want a slider, you can go into type in, and there's 10 here. It's still not changing. So let's just go back to the slider for now. So there's an extra step needed. And here's what the extra step is. We'll create this one as well, but it's a set. You need a set so that when you select the filter for top 10, you just select a parameter instead, so it can be more dynamic. So all it is this is pretty basic. It is linking to that primary key, the patient unit stay ID, and in this case, it's listed as sum, which is not correct. You want count here, but we'll get into that. And then so go back to that drug name. You right click, you go to create, and you go to set, and then it brings up drug name set. Use all. Select from list. Shouldn't be selected. Maybe I just use all. Anyway, so drug name set top 20, and then there's condition. We can leave out that for now, and then by field. So by field, we want that top 10 or top 20. Let me just go back here. I want to check something for a sec. Yeah, so we select that parameter. So it's by the parameter. Let me go back. So we go to create, set, drug name, top 10, top 20 set, let's say. Use all, go to condition, go to top, go to the field, and then we select this drug name, which we just created. It's listed down below here on the left bottom side panel, drug name, top 20 parameter, like that. We want count, and then click OK. And then we can just take this and fix it in here. And so when it goes up, oh yeah, so when you place it in the filter, you've got to remove the other filters that you have currently. But when you place this set in the filters, then it gets dynamic and uses that slider. So it gives you up to 15 here. You can use the type in. Gives you that list of the 20 drugs in that table. This is pretty handy also too for if you'd like to have the dashboard a little bit more interactive. So you will be clicking in and out of it, and the dashboard, you want to change the top filter or some sort of filter. For instance, this is the top one, but you want to change that filter in real time and see what the other graphs do. And I'll show you that as we move along here. So that's that part. And again, so we can go back to that table if we really wanted to go into that. We can go back into those EICU tables and view the admission drug ID. And it says a surrogate key for the drugs, and then we have the patient unit states, a global unique identifier. And then we go into drug name as well. It's a name of selected admission drugs. And so it gives you some up to 255 characters. It's a varchar. So that's that. Let's see here. All right, so we've kind of gotten a little bit familiar with Tableau now. Again, that show me slide, getting into those bar graphs and those right and left panels in the view of the graph. It kind of gives us some functionalities. We've actually created a slider already and getting into that analytics part. And again, these views are important for the usability of Tableau. There's a data source, tables, data, and then back arrows as well. So another thing is, and I talked about the back arrows, but I wanted to mention also the data, how it's viewed in some of the symbols that, basic symbols that Tableau provides in those table views for that graph, the worksheet view. So there's ABC here, you can see, and which is referring to the dimension or categorical variable, not an integer. So these ones are they're the blue ones. You can change blue you can shift a dimension into a measurement potentially in Tableau, which I'm not too sure what the use case would be on that one at this point, but you can do that and try that out. And then another thing is that these circles, once you create a set, it stays in that table permanently unless you remove it, and gives you the icon of two circles. In pipe F is the true and false, so it gives you that true and false indicators and those kind of things. So still, you could go to describe and you'll see the true and false there. And then also the integer itself, it's the hashtags and green hashtags. Good. We talked about this a little bit already, and just to reiterate, so you have your data source in the bottom corner, and the data source is also listed up top. You can do a new data source, but to view the current data source, you'll have to click into that bottom left-hand corner. View those files. Data source. Yeah, again, we have the blue and green. You can right click is a big thing in most of these kind of Tableau views, especially the worksheet view. For example, we showed earlier that you can create different sets or parameters, these bottom two. We'll go into groups and calculate it shortly. You can also transform split, which is important. You can convert them to measure, like I mentioned. There's a whole bunch of different, and to actually describe or figure out what the data set is actually, what domain it's in and what values it has. Okay, so we've seen that already. Again, there's in this data set, I use mostly count. Sometimes I graph with sum just to show extreme values. This one here is sum, which it shouldn't be. It's going into super amount, so it can just shift that back, go into the count. I believe that this count sum could be, and I kind of tested it out a little bit, the count distinct, could be used for linking the tables linking the variables from different tables. In this data set, I did not go into too much detail. I did not graph from different tables. In the dashboards, I could include some graphs from different tables, but I used mostly count so that it wouldn't confuse or sort of add an extra level of complexity just to in that initial exploring of the data set. So that's that. And I do like this functionality of the Tableau in terms of each drop down, each sort of integer or variable or dimension in the blue, they have this drop down and a list of different things. This is another example of it, just right in the graph itself, which is pretty nice to have. Okay, so there is removal of null values, and actually Tableau and Power BI, it's pretty straightforward. It's kind of surprisingly, and why are there not null values in this data set? I'm not too sure, but you can right click and exclude those values. I think and it's just excluding it from the graph. It's not removing it from the table. But it's something to think about when you're displaying that visualization. And then from there, we talked about the filtering. So the sorting is big. Sorting helps out tons, especially with this kind of data set. There's a lot of different fields. And so we mentioned that again. So you can right click on the blue, the dimension, and then go to the sort by field, and then go ascending or descending. And again, there's filtering. The static filtering, you can right click and go to filter, and then go into those kind of settings for general, wildcard, or condition. And then you can see that the sorting definitely and filtering can create a graph that has potentially meaning and could be used for decision-making purposes. Stacked graphs. So to create a stacked graph, I don't have too many of them in this data set. One big one is the age, because the initial data set age is not a group. It's just a string of ages. And I think from 15 onwards, I'm not too sure. And then from there, they go into that. So the age is in the patient table. The patient table is a big table. You can see it has a lot of different dimensions and measures in it. And here's the age group. Unfortunately, when you create a group, it kind of creates on top of the current measure. But we can go into editing the group, and I'll show you what it looks like. So the group itself you can literally choose whatever groups you want. Let me just I can ungroup here or rename it. So let me ungroup it first to show you what it looks like. So now you just have and the graph will change. So now you just have the first group from 15 to 25 is not grouped at all, and then you have 26 to 35, 36 to 45, and these are in there. So to group them, you just select them all. So we just select these, right click, and then you group, and then you can call it, it just gives you a name there right away, but then you can just change that. 15 to 30, 20. That's that. And then click apply. Okay. So that's the group. And then moving that group to the columns, and then creating that graph here in that display, in that Tableau. And then you can move. So another thing is, let's say from this groupings, let me just go into this one here for a sec. I'll go group by. I want to create a group here. So create a group for ethnicity, for example, and there's a group of different ethnicities. So you can right click again, group, and then you can call it group 1, for example. And you can do this to all your data, just all your measure, or sorry, all your dimension, the blue data, you can group them on the fly, just like this. And it can change the way the graph displays. But once you create that group, interesting, the age one, maybe I deleted it at some point in time, but the ethnicity one did stay there. So I'll just leave it at that, or I can just remove it. Okay, so groups is pretty straightforward. Sets is a little bit more in parameters, a little bit more steps involved. But once you create a group, you can just start graphing with that group etc. The next thing is to kind of go into detail with you about the colors. So for instance, I have gender here for the color. Let's just remove the gender color, and you'll see it's just the basic graph. So that's why that is. So if you create a stack graph, this doesn't work properly for that reason. But, so age group and the count of patient units stay. But if you want a color, you just right click, hold, and then drop to the colors, and it creates that difference of colors for you. Here's male and female, and there's some unknown here for the gender, or sorry, null values for the gender. And you can also create labels. So if you right click, just click and hold down, you can put labels here, and the labels will display. This is not the best example of that. I can go back to that graph that we created earlier with drugs to show you that, drug names to show you that. Just a sec here. Just a sec here. Sorry. Oh. Let's see. Just go back. Okay, this one here, which we haven't really filtered out yet, but let's just filter that. Top 10. Okay, let's just say that's top 10, and then we can go. I think I can just do. Can't do that, so you have to go to this one here. You have to go to the table and then move it. Medications, drug name, and then move that to the label there. So that gives you the drug name per label. But maybe that's not ideal. So you gotta want to remove that, and what you want to have the numbers. So the patient unit stay ID, for example, gives you those numbers, and then you don't want to have it displayed like that. You want it displayed. Otherwise, move that one. Sorry. And then I'll go back to this again. Sorry, label. Default to this sum. There. So a lot of null values in this. I don't know why. 30,000 is quite a lot. In this medication table for the drug names. And then you'll see acetaminophen is the highest value at 350, and then it's 294. Acetaminophen has a certain amount, and then there's this kind of thing. Okay, so all right, so stacked graphs. I think we covered that enough. I showed the different groupings. Okay, some modifications. Yeah, one thing I wanted to mention too, while we're here, is that you can right-click and then transform. You can split, but before we split, let's see what the descriptions are. Wow, you can see that the descriptions are super long, so that doesn't give us. That's why this graph doesn't look good. It's just a amount, syringe here, and expirin, sodium 40 megagrams per 0, etc., and then that kind of thing. So each package custom, blah blah blah, and then it goes into that. So how can we make this better graph? We can use split, and I have some other examples of split here. So from split, you'll see that it created 2 on the side here, and then we can go into the describe, and you'll see that it created this calculated field. See the calculated field type here, automatically created that calculated field. And then it produced this via the script, and the calculated field was based on a hash in the first row, or first part of that drug name. And that, let's go back to the describe. So there's a hyphen. Oh, here it is. These hyphens. So what it did with these hyphens, the ones with hyphens, is that there's 1,400 approximately members. So these amounts with the hyphen, it split them, and then it created these other rows. And the ones that didn't have, this has a hyphen, but ones that didn't have a hyphen, it left as is. And so then it automatically created another, another split, also on the hyphen in the second row. And then there's 128 members in this display. So you can see that it could be handy. I mean, this might not be the best example. I have a better example than this, but I just wanted, now that since I was here, showing you this graph. And there's 13, so it kind of split it from the 1,400, it only split up 100 plus members, which is not ideal. So let's graph this second splitter so we can see what it looked like. Okay, so that's not ideal. And then so let's see what this one looks like. Oh, okay. Okay, so it's not the ideal. So let's just leave that as is, and then I can go into the diagnoses, and then I can show you what the splitting does for that one, which is a better example. So in diagnoses, there is in this diagnoses table, in the diagnoses string, there is 1,091 members, and they have. For this top example, they have the burns trauma, and then they have pipes with burns, and then a pipe burn injury, and then a pipe, and then less than 10% of body surface, etc. So, but you can see that there's a repeat here on this left side before the pipes. And so when I did that splitting, it created a split of 4 splits, and it was based on the pipes because there's 4 pipes along those strings. And so it created 14 members. So from that 1,300, and then the second split created 20 members, or sorry, 105 members. Right. So let me just. It's better for me to graph it too for you to show you. Really. And then show me the table. Oh, yeah, the table. Okay, good. So there's a table there. You can see that it's quite long, and then there's some repeats. And then get into the count instead of sum. And so you can see this. It's kind of like the drug names. It's not legible. But if we remove this diagnosis string, and we put it into the split string. Looks better. We can kind of potentially sort them in descending order. Yeah, and then we can see for the first string, cardiovascular is the number 1, and then the next is pulmonary. And if we want to see labels, we can kind of ballpark it here between, maybe it's 6,800. But if you want a more better, I don't know what defaults to sum all the time. It's kind of annoying. And then your count, so 6828 for cardiovascular compared to pulmonary at 4,742. So it kind of gives you an idea of that, how the filtering and sorting really can change the graph. And then when you're looking at just the groupings of it or the sets, you can also change that graph the way visually. And then you can manipulate a little bit further in strings. There is also another manipulation. In strings basically is a calculator field. So that's calculator fields manipulating that data. And it's Tableau is really nice this way. I'll show a similar kind of process in PowerBI, which takes a few more steps. So let me show you a few other fields that I have. I think from the admit path. Okay, so let's admit path here. I believe it's got a lot of long string. Yeah. So admit path has 294 members, and it has these pipes in between these. So it has admission, diagnosis, additional Apache, which is an acronym. Acute physiological chronic health evaluation. And it kind of gives you these differences in the pipes. Or it gives you a string with all these with this specific member of all these components, probably from electronic record somewhere that they've somehow extracted that way. And so you can right click and then go into transform again, and you can just split. You can do custom splits as well, which gets into more of the coding and scripting. And then you go into describe. And describe is it creates 3 splits here in this calculated field from the defaulted sort of process, and it's 1 split. So it basically it removes admission and diagnoses in the second one because it was repeated in the pipe in this in the 6th one. So they have no pipes in here. There's 237 members now, and it gives you a list of these values. You can see there's comments, so it didn't really split on the comments. So maybe you want to do a custom split after, and you do commas, so it kind of separates that out and removes some of the duplications or the replicated words, or duplicated words in those strings. That's another example of that. And then another one I have is for, you go to the nurse assessment. Yeah, and it's the cell attribute path. And go into the cell attribute path, and then let's just go to describe first. Okay, so in this cell, there's 81 members, and it's quite long string flow sheets, which to me sounds like a EHR kind of area that the record's in, or this assessment's in, or this attribute path, whatever that is. I have to look it up potentially, but or I should look it up. Flow sheet cell labels, nursing assessments, cardiovascular, escalations, heart sounds. So it looks like flow sheets are repeating here, flow sheet cell labels, and even nursing assessments, and potentially even cardiovascular. So if you really wanted to look at the data source, like just the actual columns, you have to go to the data source. There's probably a few other little clicks in here, but for now, let's go back to the data source. And then where's that nurse assessment thing? Oh, maybe it's viewing it. Thinking. Okay, good. It showed that. I didn't want to add the relationship, but let's go. Okay, so then it's on that nurse assessment table. Oh, I created a new one. Oh, whatever. Anyway, so there it is there, that cell attribute path. And you can see that it does repeat the first 3, but maybe the cardiovascular, there's also respiratory there, neurological, and so on. So let's go back to that graph. Just gonna do a back arrow. Okay, so we're in nurse assessment, and then so we're in the cell attribute path. We looked at the string And we see that there's some repetition. There's only 81 members. Let's just see what happens when we just graph it. So then let's just graph the nurse, okay, and then the patient unit stay ID, okay, and then the count, okay, and then maybe change this order here. Okay, so it's not legible. It can't really might be able to shift that over, but still it's not ideal. So let's just create a string. Okay. Do that, and then we can go into this, and then we see that that's the first string. Maybe I can graph side by side. Oh, it's going to combine them all. No, I don't. I guess you could do it that way as well. But so that's the first and second string. I think if you sort ascending in the field, gives us an idea of the top. But I think you have to do that sort on the second one as well, on the field. Okay, so that gives you an idea. Scores, intervention, Braden scale, Morse fall risk. Maybe I should put these labels in here. Give a count. So there's for the scores, the intervention Braden scale, there's 15,000 for that one. It's the largest one by a long shot. What actually it is, I have to go back to the tables here. Nurse assessment. Nurse assessment and path. So the full string of the nurse assessment entry selected in the e-care manager and the sections of the assessment will be separated by a symbol, e.g. flow sheet. Okay, so it is really specific to like an electronic health record, these sort of cell attributes. It's kind of interesting. Operationally, not too sure. I have to have a nurse background potentially, or ask someone with nursing informatics background. But still, it gives you an idea of the top and how to display these attributes or these strings. We could try maybe to put the third string in. Might not be as legible, no, but let me just try to sort it. Field. Not as good. But it does give you an indication of the complexity of the nurse assessment and sort of their data in the EHR. So we go back to there, and then we can see the cardiovascular, pulses, edema, oscillation, skin color, capillary refill, pacemaker. Pacemakers at 1,400, 1,449, and that kind of thing. Alrighty, so another modification is changing the shapes, and basically that in Tableau is from the defaults. When I was trying to, and really ideally, the comparison of Tableau to Power BI is to have the same graphs. Like you don't want to do apples and oranges. You want to have oranges and oranges or apples and apples. But I found through that process that it's not as easy as it sounded. And one of them was this graph here, which I'll show in Power BI later on. But initially, the automatic is the line graph here, and I tried different ways to graph it, and I couldn't do the bar graph. It's not highlighted. In Power BI, I could do the bar graph for some reason. This one I can in Tableau. So that was a little bit frustrating. But then when I clicked in here and I do the bar graph, it doesn't do a bar graph. It doesn't kind of puts, visually it's kind of interesting. is it ideally? I'm not too sure in visualization. And then there's these little symbols. So these symbols are the data points, and it kind of shows this is an important graph, really. It shows that in the data set, there's more Caucasians in this data set than the other, like African, Asian, Hispanic, Native American, and others. So another thing that's kind of cool in Tableau is they show you exactly how many null values are in this axis, even though they're colored here, to give you a little prompt on the side, which is kind of neat. But anyways, this is an important graph because it shows you where the data set is, and in that what the percentage is of Caucasian versus other races, I don't know exactly, but I think it's over 50%. It's just the way the data set was turned out to be from those researchers that had the actual data set. You can also see that the range of the number of patients within that the Caucasian ethnic group is much larger in the counts within those ages. So to really get information about, Hispanic, for example, it might not be as valid as the Caucasian one, and Native American here is very low, unfortunately, in this data set. Important one, and then manipulation I consider not only in Tableau to split the strings, but also to change the defaults. What I landed on is these circles, which you can sort of see how much the range is within those age groups, and sort of the distribution is much larger than the other races here. That's that one. I mean, there's a lot of different, nice thing about Tableau is there's a lot of different selections you can, I mean, even the Gantt chart or Gantt bar is available, but the thing about those kind of selections, though, you got to really understand the data, and if you just click on the Gantt chart, it might not look appropriate. Measured values. I kind of talked about this a little bit already, but in that graph, in this demographics in the demographics dashboard, I have gender, admin weight, ethnicity, and then emerge. And then I'll show you some of that interactivity, which is kind of the highlight of Tableau, really, in a little bit. So you have this measured values, which is the green, and then you can create two different measured values here in this graph, rather than just one. And so you have these average measured values of the admission weight and then discharge weight. So you have admit weight here and then discharge weight. So you have Caucasian is similar, but then you have some discrepancies. But again, in the Asian ethnicity, but again, I can't really conclude about anything. I know the data set's a little bit skewed, and the numbers are not as high as for these average values as the Caucasian ones. So maybe at the end of the day, if they were the similar kind of distribution across the ages in those ethnicity groups, it would show similar admit weight. But it's interesting. I mean, admit weight lower after being in hospital is not ideal, so it could be an important measure. And to bring down, so to bring these in these measured values, it's basically when you create a new table, you just drag these values in there. You can just create an example here. Well, maybe I should just go back to the one. I got to find that where that is. So another thing about Tableau, so when don't want to bounce around too much on you, but when I'm in the graph, clicking on it, some defaults show up, that doesn't really make sense. That's not what the graph is. I don't know why that is. Like, it should be a bar graph here. So that's different. And then when you're in the graph, you can't really see, there's no highlight where the tables are. So it's a bit tricky to figure out where is this data coming from. And so you have to go searching around for it. And gender, we know, in age group was in the patient table. So admit weight's got to be in here somewhere. Okay, so there it is. There's admit weight here. So if I go, then there's discharge weight, which is there. So if I go back, like I'll just create a new one again. So I go admit weight, starts off default to sum, I'll change it to the average. And then discharge weight, average. And then let me just go back to the slide that I think about. Think about where the sorry. Think about where the values are coming up. Oh, I see. Okay, so now I need ethnicity at the top, and I need measures. Measures name. Average. Oh, measures name. Source. I've done this a few times, but okay, so let me just click in here. So we're just graphing I'm attempting to graph this one again. I've done it a few times, but I need to figure out what the measures names are in this filter. So let me just try to search measures. Oh, measure names. Okay, so put that up here. But oh, I see. It's not them. Oh, measure name here. Okay. Somehow that worked. It converted it to, I think I needed to convert it to, interesting. Anyway, so measure names, you drag it over here, and I also placed it in here, and then I moved it up top. And then measure values is down here. And then unfortunately, or fortunately, oh, I get it. So then I just I needed to select something here. Oh, I get it. So I don't want to include all those things in there. Not the best example. Admission, weight, admit weight, discharge weight. Oh, it's summed it. So, oops, sorry. Change that to count. No, sorry, average. Okay. And so this one here, I can go into color and color. And so if we want to change colors, I got there somehow. Apologize. Shouldn't laugh, but that's interesting. Okay, so apply. Okay, it's kind of similar. It's there. Okay. So we got this graph. And again, so we got these null values. You can exclude them, but then you have the ethnicity, which is in the columns here. across. Like I mentioned in this data set, unfortunately, the Caucasians are a large part of it, larger than the other ethnicity. Like this Caucasian group's got more distribution of the measures compared to other ethnicities across age distributions. So let me just yeah, so that's that one. So the measured values is a little bit tricky. My understanding is the measured values that exist here and here. So you have to move it up, and then you have to actually filter it to show just the two above your average discharge weight and average discharge. Sorry, average admission weight and average discharge weight. Okay, so yeah, I think we're moving along pretty good. I do want to spend at least an hour with Power BI, and we're at 10:30. I have a few more slides to do for just to review what we've done in Tableau, and then we'll stop there for I think a 5-minute break would be good, and then we can get into Power BI, or I can just continue on. But let me just do this now, and then we can. I'll talk to the group here. I did want to actually introduce people at the break. That was something I was thinking of doing, but I think a few people left the workshop. Okay, so creating sets again, just to reiterate, is an important part in Tableau. It gives more dynamic filters and slicers and stuff like that. It's one reason why Power BI, I believe, was designed the way it is, because Tableau came out first, right? And Tableau's kind of I think from Stanford or some academic research group initially, whereas Power BI is Microsoft. But so anyway, so creating sets is important. There's 4 tabs. General tab you can select, and we saw when we're doing a measured value, we can also do something similar. We can just select from the list or do all. Then there's different conditions we can set, which we didn't go into too much detail. We can match values in the wildcard. And then the top one, we can actually, that's the one I used the most, the top 20. And that's what it looks like. You can create different gradients. You can change the color. You can do different sizes, change the sizes and stuff like this. That was the drug name table that we went into detail. Again, the patient unit stay ID is the primary key, which we use for count. This one's top 30. This one's top 20. This one's top 20 again. I have a bunch of links here that goes into detail about different ways to do this. I chose the most straightforward way in my attempt to sort of show that. And you can create different sliders. I have a slider in the parameters. We can utilize that later on. Some of the slides I have, I pasted these videos, and they're pretty short. I just want to play one of them for you just to see what it looks like on the screen. Some is not sound, and we did the drug name there, and we have count. And it's a short video. You need to have internet access, connected to play these. We went over the how many numbers of patients potentially with aspirin, sorry, administered, dispensed, or prescribed. And then the drug name table, the drug name in that table for patient frequency or counts of that patient unit stay ID is too long. And we changed the orientation of it, switching the columns and rows. And we go into some sorting again, into the fields. Sort by field. You can move count hold down the control, click and hold down the shift key and then move to the count to show the labels. And then the colors, we can hold down the count to the colors. We can edit the colors. And again, we need to create a parameter. We went over that earlier. It's just kind of we're reiterating this, but these slides are, you have these slides now and you can review them, but I wanted to play this video. You need to change it to an integer. Change the range. And then the parameter is showing there. Then you have to show the parameter to display it on the side. Still doesn't, the slider doesn't work. You need for the typing because you need to create a set. There is sound in the background. I didn't share my screen with sound. That's why you don't hear the sound, just my voice in real time. Use all. Select from the list. Selecting. Select the parameter in that top selection instead of the static number. Create that set. Move it to the filters. That's it. Okay. All right, diagnosis and treatment. That's an important table in the Tableau that we have from this data set. I actually made it as yeah, this one here. So again, it was on the string that we talked about earlier. You can sort it. It's not sorted yet, but pretty straightforward at this point in time. That's it. So that's the diagnosis table. And I used that in some of the dashboards because it's obviously important. The diagnosis part can link to other interactions with the patient. Calculated fields, you can edit the calculated fields. I can go into that in a little bit detail with you, but I need okay. Oh, yeah, there. Fields. This one here is just a lookup that I had set up. You can do regression, you name it. Let's see. Slides. So we split the data. Calculated fields is default, like the actual splitting of the data based on the pipes creates a calculated field. So calculated fields also can be involved with the analytics part. And it's pretty simple. This is a highlight, I think, of Tableau, especially in comparison with Power BI. So if you go to the, there's a dashboard here for Apache score, and then just a couple down is the hospital length of stay, and then I have predicted hospital length of stay with Apache score. And then if you're in the tab, the data tab shows the tables. If you go into analytics, you can scroll down a bit and you go into trend line, and then you move the trend line up into the linear, and it creates a linear form. And it creates this calculated measure, which is pretty high. It's obviously, some of this data has already been, it's predicted hospital length of stay, not actual, but the actual, there is an in the table, in the Apache table, there is an actual hospital length of stay. So you could use that later on. But so it gives you just a basic regression function, pi r squared. If you right click on it, you can edit the trend lines and you can show confidence intervals, for example. And here you can see the line, and then these confidence intervals increase after the midway of the line. So it gets smaller and smaller, and then you can see at the bottom too, it's a little bit larger. Is this the best example? Maybe not, but it does show you how quick Tableau can do that regression in those calculated fields. And there's a lot of calculated fields that can go in here. I have a video of that, just that process, simple process. Okay, so let's get into the dashboards. I want to round that out before we get into the Power BI stuff. So I have a list of the dashboards already set up for you. I'm not going to create one, but just go over the sort of steps. This one here in the dashboards, you can right click on, let's say, emergency, for example. Then there's this filter, and then you can see the graphs change. So the numbers change. So if I had labels here with the numbers, it might be better than it currently is, but you can see that there is some dynamics to the dashboards depending on what graphs you show or have here. In the actual layout of the dashboards, there's different ways to do it. Honestly, I literally just click on the new dashboards on the bottom or the top here, a new dashboard, and then I just start adding the graphs. And a nice thing about Tableau, they do show which graphs are in the dashboards. They have these check boxes. Here, there's 4 of them, so 4 graphs. And you can change the way those are displayed. You can also change the layout in the beginning. You can do tiles versus floating. There's different ways of designing it, XY positions. This is just the default desktop browser, but like you can click on the device view here. You can go into different monitors sizes. This one's the generic desktop monitor, and there's even mobile phone. This is a tablet, so it's slightly different. You see the tablet's different. The outline of the tablet is here. So if I was to display this on a tablet, it wouldn't show all the graphs. Kind of cool feature in Tableau. And then mobile phone, well, the outline is here, and so it doesn't even display. It only captures 1 3/4 of a graph. It's kind of cut off, almost 2, but doesn't show all. So that's kind of an interesting feature of Tableau. And there's extensions in here you can include as well. And then you can, different way you orient these is horizontal versus vertical. You can switch that up once you have it displayed. Again, the icon for the dashboards is there's 4 squares. The worksheets do not have it. And then the storyboard has like an open book kind of icon. Okay, so there's a demographics dashboard that I created. There's the clinical one that I created. Are these exactly the way that they should be? That remains a question, but there is some dynamics to the dashboards. You can see they switch. If I do pulmonary, obviously respiratory, airways, pulmonary, all these things, vascular. These are summations. This is kind of exaggerated. Oh no, so wait a minute. Count. Oh, that's yeah. So these values are not, I changed the way they kind of display it. Anyway, so, but still it shows you that when you're clicking in this dashboard for pulmonary, it shows pulmonary diseases in the ICU in a different table. And then, but we see that the allergies table graph here does not change. So that's maybe not the best table to have in this, or have to think about a better linkage there. Let's kind of just set it up that way and click in there and highlight one bar and then the filter. Apache, there's a few different Apache tables in here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. For example, you can do hospitalist here and then click, and then the scores will change. So there's definitely a little bit more variation all of a sudden. And you can see that actually even the model changed. Its R² is 0.74 now. And the confidence intervals kind of expanded on the top here for sure. That's interesting. And then pulmonary, let's do that. Let's see what happens there. Even more so, the model's not as significant. Well, p-value is, but not the R². So kind of pretty cool stuff. This is one of my favorites of the functionality is the usability of Tableau is this kind of dashboard filters. Rather than having just static graphs, they'll change and you'll get an idea. And maybe there's an idea there to actually include another graph or not include if there's something missing in that functionality in those dashboards. ICU information. So at each icon of the dashboard, the square here, so 4 squares in the bottom, I have worksheets. Unfortunately, with Tableau, when you click on the window, like it just show you what you're at, but it doesn't show which one's worksheets, which one's not. It just gives you a list, which is really unfortunate. Maybe in the naming convention, if I knew that, I would have changed slightly different the names of the dashboards versus the worksheets. But there it is. And then there's the dreaded pie chart up here that doesn't really do much value, but still you can filter med surgery. You can see a lot of this, the diagnoses offsets are the unit type for med surgery and ICU is a large portion of this data set. Example. Click off of that. And then, wish there was a better way to scroll through here, but okay, so there's care plans. And the care plans I found with this in Tableau working through this, it's really related to the clinical workflows, which my background's not in that. And actually, with my introduction to this by Dr. Elizabeth Brickey, my actual background is in forestry before I got into health informatics. And that's where my initial PhD comes from. And I worked in forestry for a number of years. And then now in the last 10, 12 years, I've been in health informatics, which has been awesome. Lots more detail. I mean, counting trees versus understanding care plans is a total different ballgame. And just even health informatics itself does actually allude to some of the reasons why the care plans are designed the way they are and that they're naming conventions, but actually the workflow, I really need to work with someone that has that experience to really understand what this means. But still, this is what I kind of started out with, and then I can kind of graph these and then kind of get some insight into how this data set was even designed. There's intervention categories here. There's offset times, which is in minutes. I didn't change. You can change all these labels. I just left them as is. Another one here, nurse. This one I found very difficult too, because we kind of went over the attribute paths, and they're based on the eCare Manager, which is a module in an EHR. So and I didn't split the data, which you can see it's not useful. This is another way of looking at some of that data. It's not really that useful, but I think there is attributes or at least graphs here that can be grouped together, and then maybe I need to go further into them in their design so that I can show a nurse dashboard. Some assessment. And then, okay, so another thing, and again, the worksheets are right after each dashboard. So I have a few drug dashboards, and the big thing with the drug, one is the interaction on the dashboards is pretty minimal. It's very hard to see. This one does just as MG. It doesn't give me any insight. And it's not easy to graph. Like, do we really want to see the top numbers, or do we want to see these drug names linked to diagnoses or treatments or plans or care plans or something like that, right? Most like the treatment plans, but what is the workflow? And also the drug naming conventions are quite complicated. So creating a dashboard is not as easy as I initially thought. But still, I do like working with the filters and sorting the drug names in Tableau. It's kind of a nice feature. So that I provided that stuff for you. Here's the top 20 with the example we covered. Drug allergies is important, especially with clinical decision support. Drug-to-drug allergy or drug-to-drug interactions and drug-to-allergy interactions is something set in the EHR for clinical decision support tools or triggers, alerts, reminders, those kind of things, and very important for patient safety. From the data set, I didn't get a whole lot out of it. I got some offset time for penicillin was higher for some. I had C. Cerner in the fields. I don't know what that means. Something's not right there. And then the allergy names are kind of linked as well. So not a whole lot I got out of it, but there's user types, and then there's allergy record offsets, which I thought was interesting with nurse here with attending physician and then resident. So this is different physicians, and maybe I should go to that graph. Yeah, so THC, nurse, attending physician, resident, THC, physician, physician assistant, nurse practitioner, nurse, fellow, consultant, and they give their, these are some values, but if I change this to average, it might be better, the graph. So the average time, which is good, or the lowest is the nurses compared to physicians. So it's kind of interesting. Some other dashboards here. Again, the diagnoses, cardio is a big one in this field, and then you can link that to different graphs for treatments and stuff. Admit sources, another field. I kind of put a few graphs in here. Like, I thought maybe physical exam could be linked to the admits, different MIT sources, but that wasn't true. A large part of this data set was through the ED, admitted through the ED. That's outpatient. Labs are another thing that was similar to pharmaceuticals, going through this exercise in Tableau. Not easy to graph labs and have an interactive dashboard. There's a lot of going on there, different terminologies, different inventory types. But vitamin was pretty high for the lab results. I'm not too sure why. Creatine, which is, I think, for heart failure, which is up there in a few different lab results. Those kind of things. I have a microbiome one here that I wanted to share. Yeah, so microbiology, there's a microlab table, very difficult to sort of kind of filter through. Gives you an idea of the culture site, which, there's those orders that go through that. But then there's different organisms and those kind of things. So that was kind of interesting. It looked like the data set came from that was in the EHR, came from those order sets in fairly good detail. That's about it. So on the slides, go into the demographics we went into. Oh, we're going down. Yeah, clinical Apache scores. We went into the R-squared kind of changes in the dashboard, the filters, the nurse assessment, a little bit more. We separated some strings out and regraphed, but there's a little bit more to do in the dashboards. Pharmacy is not easy to create. Dashboard. Please have a look at these dashboards. You can change them as you wish. If you're, once you have it on your desktop. Okay, so storyboards. Before we go into PowerBI, let me go back into the storyboards. The storyboard, so like there's one storyboard here. I just kind of move stuff into it. Stuff meaning the actual dashboards and a few worksheets. So there's a list of the dashboards here, and then you'll see the worksheets underneath them. This is kind of cool. They do have the icon here, so you can kind of see which ones are dashboards, which ones aren't. And for one storyboard, it checks off all of what's on here. And there's different layouts you can do. There's not a whole lot of variety in what to choose from. And you just scroll across like from each dashboard. So, I mean, I have too many dashboards really, but if I wanted to sort of think about 4 or 5 dashboards that are good, then I can just do a storyboard, link them together, and then, you know, show someone in nursing, for example, would this dashboard yield any decision making or produce any sort of question marks on where the data is or what the data is telling us. So yeah, kind of a cool feature. Yeah. Alrighty. So does anyone? I think we should take a 5-minute break. That way, I have a little bit less than an hour to show Power BI. In the meantime, if you have any questions, you can contact me at any time.